After giving birth to the Emperor of Heaven's twin dragon eggs, I escaped with one of them. 300 years later, I was out on business, and gave my newly transformed cub a warning. Son, wait for me at home. I'll be back soon. He nodded obediently. He then secretly followed me to the human world. After I discovered him, I had no choice but to take him with me. One day, I was leading him home. As soon as we reached the valley entrance, a figure pounced upon us. Mother! Why are you just coming back? I've been waiting for you for a month. Me? My son is home. Then who was I holding? One. In fact, I'd noticed something was wrong with Nian cub half a month earlier. He was the devil of Yunsang Mountain. From the mountain spirits and monsters to the flowers, birds, fish, and insects, all had suffered from his torture. And this time in the human world, he was surprisingly well behaved and obedient. Even the breath concealment technique, which I'd been teaching him for half a month, but couldn't master, he mastered with uncanny skill. Son, if you had told me you could conceal your presence earlier, I would have brought you out long ago. I was overjoyed. I cupped Nianzai's cheeks and rubbed them again and again. He, who usually whimpered, "Mom, stop pinching my face," now obediently allowed me to torture him. His face flushed, his eyes wide and bright. Strange, truly strange. But I didn't suspect anything. I simply assumed Nianzai had listened to my words. Thus, we spent a month in the human world filled with a truly loving mother and filial son. 2. Until now. I looked at the two Nianzai before me. I realized I might have recognized the wrong person. Mom. Who is he? The real Nianzai was no less calm than I was. He watched me holding his hand. He looked heartbroken. When did you give me a little brother? Looking at his exaggerated expression and movements, I almost instantly confirmed it. Yes, that's right. This is my son. What nonsense. Mom's only been away for a month. How could I possibly give you a little brother this big? I slapped him across the head. Nianzai gritted his teeth in pain, but still insisted. Then why does he look exactly like me? This? I don't know. At first, I thought it was some spirit transformed. But on second thought, few people outside Yunsang Mountain have ever seen my son's true appearance. How could a spirit have such powerful magic? To have deceived me. I was completely confused. But after spending a month together, I realized he meant no harm. So I just coughed lightly. My dear, what's the matter with you, disguised as my son and following me around? The fake Nianzai, whom I called young friend, was still reveling in the shock of seeing the real Nianzai. He heard me. He looked at me blankly. I haven't changed. And you were the one who called me that day. Another threatening gaze fell upon me. I silently pushed Nianzai's face away. I felt a little embarrassed. 3. This is true. That day, I left the valley to run some errands. As soon as I arrived in the human world, I saw a child standing in front of a bun stall. He looked exactly like Nianzai. I was startled and immediately ran over to pull him away. You little brat. Didn't you promise me you'd stay in the valley? Why did you sneak out with me? I was scolding him. I didn't notice his confused look at all. Only after I finished scolding him did I hear my stomach growl. Hungry? Wait. With that, I went to the bun stand we'd been to, bought 2 buns, and stuffed them into his hand. Remember, don't run around. Hide your presence. There are a lot of monsters here that prey on children. I held his hand and kept on talking. The problem was, he finished his buns. He didn't even tell me I'd mistaken him for someone else. And he'd been following me around for the past month, eating and drinking for free. Thinking of this, I felt right again. He knew he was guilty. He tugged at the corner of his clothes, lowered his head, and refused to look at me. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Is it enough to know you're wrong? You're still claiming someone else's mother. This is my mother, where's your own? Nianzai was unconvinced. He placed his hands on his hips and glared at him. He whispered, I don't have a mother. Nianzai, who had been so full of himself just a moment ago, was stunned. He couldn't help but drop his hand. He looked at me with an expression that said, Mom, I said the wrong thing. Damn it. What do I do now? So he's still a pitiful child. That's understandable. I sighed. For a moment, I forgot to investigate why this child looked exactly like Nianzai. Just think of it as nature itself, and that similarities naturally exist, not to mention appearance. Since you're not Nianzai, what's your name? He looked up, his eyes shining. Anian, my name is Anian. Anian only told me his name. He remained silent about his origins. I guessed he had a conflict with his family and ran away. But what child would run away for a month without worrying about it? I was helpless. I could only take Anian in temporarily while I inquired about other children who were missing. 3 or 5 days passed like this. Anyan and Nianzi had already developed a deep friendship in just a few days. Nianzi had been mischievous since childhood. But I knew he was actually quite lonely. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so often visiting the spirits in Huohua Valley. With Anyan, Nianzi took him, along with him to Huohua. That day, I asked the lovebirds, who had just returned from outside the valley. How's it going? Have you heard anything about any children missing? No, but... The lovebirds hesitated. But what? But there's news from the heavenly realm. An emperor's young prince has gone missing, and they're sending people to look for him. Perhaps it's been too long since I heard news from the heavenly realm. My eyebrows instinctively jumped. Which emperor? Kunshan ruins, Changza emperor. Shit. I should have thought of that sooner. In this world, there's no one who looks exactly like Nianzi. Besides the question of probability, it was the other dragon egg I'd laid. 5. I'd thought we'd never see each other again in this lifetime. To think. I'd just casually picked it up. I'd actually picked up another child of mine in this world. Mother. Just as I was lost in thought, Nianzi came over, holding Anian's hand. I saw his dirty little face and frowned with a hint of disdain. Have you been in the mud again? Despite my complaints, I took out my handkerchief and wiped his face clean. As I was wiping, another bright, expectant gaze fell upon me. Looking down, it was Anian. Mother, please wipe Anian's too, Nianzi said. I would have wiped him even if he hadn't asked. I beckoned Anian over. While wiping his face, I took a closer look. In fact, he was still a little different from Nianzi. Nian's eyes and brows resemble Changza's, while Anian's look more like mine. I said. When Nian was hatched, I was a little annoyed. Why should my child look like that unfaithful man? It turns out the one who looks like me is right here. It's just. I don't know how Changza raises children. He himself is as cold as an iceberg. And now he's raised Anian, and he's mature beyond his years. I was furious and resentful. But then I heard Anian say. Thank you, Aunt Shuriang. I wish my mother were still here. Suddenly, a wave of guilt washed over me. But before I could share Anian's grief, Nian patted his shoulder. Don't be sad. Although you don't have a mother, I don't have a father either. It's just as well. From now on, we're good brothers. Yeah. Anian nodded vigorously. I looked speechlessly at the two brothers, who had reached a tacit understanding. If I didn't stop them, it seemed they were about to swear brotherhood right in front of me. All right, all right. I quickly pulled Nianzi away. Stop messing around, little brat. I need to tell you something. Two pairs of equally bright eyes stared at me. Looking at the two similar little faces before me, a tenderness welled up in my heart. But when I thought of what the lovebirds had said to me, I couldn't help but suppress this tender, motherly feeling. I became serious and formal. Anian, I've found your family. Anian's face froze. He must be wondering how I knew his identity so quickly. But he'd lived with me for so long. He should know something about my abilities. Nianzi's eyes widened. What? So Anian's leaving? Yes. I don't want to, mother. I can't bear to leave Anian. I want to be with Anian. Before I could say anything more, Nianzi had already grasped Anian's hand. The two of them instantly looked at me with tears in their eyes, their expressions pitiful. Though my heart softened, I had to face a reality. If Changza knew I was secluded here with Nianzi, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to keep either of my children. Nianzi, Anian's family is looking for him. If he doesn't return, how worried they'll be. I spoke gently. Nianzi knew it. But the child had finally found a playmate. And suddenly they were separated. The feeling of reluctance washed over him. I softened my heart and simply gave them time to say goodbye. When we reached the valley's mouth, Nianzi was still reluctant to leave. Although Anian was a little more composed, his eyes were also red. Nianzi asked, "Can you come play with me again in the future?" "Of course. I'll come see you when I have time." The two children said goodbye reluctantly. 6. We left Yunsong Mountain. I led An Yen towards Kunshan Market. An Yen. The little man, still lost in the melancholy of parting, looked up at me. I looked at his resemblance to Nianzi. A myriad thoughts suddenly surged through my mind. I knew it when I left. I would be letting a child down. But this was the most foolproof solution I could think of. When we return to Kunshan Market, don't tell anyone about your encounter with Nianzi, okay? Why? We're just little fairies from Yunsong Mountain. If Emperor Changza knew, it would be a bit troublesome. If I'm right, An Yen had escaped secretly himself. This time, he would undoubtedly be questioned by Changza. I didn't want Changza to discover Nianzi and me. I told An Yen not to tell anyone about my encounter to avoid unnecessary trouble. An Yen understood. He nodded silently. I remembered the promise I made to Nianzi before we parted. So, can I not go play with Nianzi? He looked at me questioningly. His dark eyes were filled with anticipation and anxiety. As if tears would well up in his eyes if I refused. And I couldn't bring myself to say better not. 7. Silence. We had reached the border of Kunshan ruins. I looked at the towering celestial palace, shrouded in auspicious clouds and filled with the singing of phoenixes. I sighed inwardly. After all these years, this place hasn't changed at all. Okay, I'll take you here. An Yen hid the disappointment in his eyes. As soon as we landed, we were about to wave goodbye. But before he could finish his words, a deep, cold voice rang out from behind. An Yen. Father. An Yen's face was suddenly filled with surprise. He stood there bewildered, as if he hadn't expected to be caught by Changza at the gate of heaven. Let's not talk about him. I hadn't expected it either. From what I could remember, Changza was either cultivating or in seclusion. He rarely left the Kunshan ruins' immortal gate. He was known as the most homebody emperor in the divine realm. However, he hadn't changed much. His figure was imposing, his dignity and arrogance dignified. But he also had a deceptively cold and aloof face. While it made people covet him, they didn't dare to do anything to him. Back then, I was blinded by greed and became the first to pluck this high-ranking flower. But the consequences were well known. 8. Anyan stared blankly at Changza as he approached. The latter's gaze fell on him. Where have you been? The question was light, yet it carried a harsh, oppressive tone. Changza said that Anyan was supposed to attend a lecture with Shongsher Yuanzun today. To his surprise, he still hadn't shown up by the time came. I sent someone to inquire, only to find out he was gone. The little prince's disappearance is no small matter. Everyone searched everywhere, but they didn't expect him to be so bold. Sneaking off to the human world on his own. Have you become so capable? Who taught you to be like this? Anyan lowered his head, stammering, unable to speak. Seeing him being scolded by Changza, a wave of heartache suddenly welled up in my heart. Is Changza always this harsh with Anyan? He shouldn't be. He always kept his public and private lives separate, and his strictness was measured. Could it be because Anyan looks like me? He took out all the anger he'd felt towards me on Anyan. What a bastard. If I had known, I wouldn't have spared him a single egg. I was just beginning to feel indignant. Suddenly, a clear, female voice, accompanied by a celestial sound, drifted over. The young prince has returned. I hadn't felt anything at all when I heard Changza's voice. But when I heard Fu Yao's words, I narrowed my eyes instantly. After 300 years of not seeing her, her status seemed to have risen considerably. The number of fairy maidens behind her rose from 4 to 8. She carried the faint majesty of someone in charge of Kunshan ruins. Fu Yao stepped forward gracefully. Always adept at dealing with people, she immediately sensed the uneasy atmosphere between Changza and Anian. She then looked at Anian, leaned over and spoke gently. Young prince, you sneaked out of the palace without permission. The emperor was so worried about you that he even avoided today's immortal discussion just to find you. Hearing this, Anian looked up at Changza. I'm sorry, father. It was my fault. Changza sighed slightly. I'll punish you with 5 hours of sword practice. Yes. Anian was led away by the fairy maidens. Fu Yao slowly turned to Changza and spoke softly again. Emperor, now that the young prince has returned, you need not worry. Changza remained silent, his lips still pursed. But I could clearly see that his expression had softened considerably. In that case, it was time for me to leave. I quietly prepared to leave. But as soon as I turned, a cold, sharp gaze suddenly fell upon me. Wait. Me. I had thought that someone so absorbed in Anian wouldn't notice me. To my surprise, my footsteps froze in place. Who are you? Changza asked gravely. Fu Yao's gaze followed suit. She seemed to have just noticed my presence, a look of scrutiny in her eyes. Luckily, I had concealed my presence and appearance before coming. Over the past few hundred years, I've also diligently cultivated. While I can't compare to those immortals in the divine realm, at least I wouldn't reveal my true identity for a moment. I lowered my head and said respectfully in a raspy voice, Little demon is an unknown immortal herb cultivated in the lower realm. Fu Yao inquired, did you send the young prince back? Yes. Fu Yao stared at me suspiciously. She was naturally perceptive. Fortunately, I had made all the necessary preparations before coming here, and had a mental diagram of how I had met Anyan. Seeing that my words were flawless, Fu Yao hummed, a hint of pride in her eyes. In that case, I must thank you very much. Did you know that you met the young prince of Changza Emperor? Fu Yao maintained her condescending attitude. I couldn't help but roll my eyes, but I had to keep a smile on my face. Little demon is terrified. Well, you can go now. That was exactly what I needed her to say. I hurriedly asked. Back off. The man who had called out to me from the beginning, yet remained silent throughout, suddenly spoke. You just said, which mountain are you from? Of course, I couldn't possibly tell you the real name of the mountain. So I made one up. After I answered, the man on the other side fell silent. I couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. The gaze on me wouldn't move away. Fu Yao noticed it too. Emperor, is there something wrong? No. Negaze finally withdrew his gaze. I don't know if it was my imagination. I sensed a hint of disappointment in his eyes as he lowered his gaze. Negaze said calmly, "Thank you for today. I owe you a favor. If you need my help in the future, just come find me." The words sounded familiar. I thought about it and remembered Negaze saying it before. But back then, I didn't recognize it as a polite remark. With a smile, I leaned forward. Thinking back, I really was such a jerk. "I wouldn't dare," I said, feigning panic. Nang said nothing more and turned to leave. Fu Yao followed him, only glancing at me before leaving. 10. Returning to Yunsang Mountain. I went to look for Nianzai. I had expected him to be as aggrieved and sad as Onian. To my surprise, he was already humming a song while plucking the wings of a lovebird. "Nianzai. Mother, you're back. This is for you." I looked at the lovebird feather shuttlecock he handed me, a little surprised. "Why aren't you sad? Hey, what's the big deal? We'll meet again if we're destined to." So calm. I was surprised at Nianzai's change of heart. I thought of the years Nianzai had spent secluded with me in Yunsang Mountain. He finally met a friend he got along with, but we parted ways after just a short while. He was undoubtedly heartbroken. But he didn't show it, perhaps fearing I'd feel guilty. Thinking of this, I truly felt guilty. I patted Nianzai's head. "Nianzai, I'm sorry. Next time, I'll take you to the human world to play, okay?" Nianzai nodded, looking incredibly well behaved. I felt so relieved and went about my business. But I'd clearly underestimated Nianzai. Given his unwavering desire for chaos, how could he stay so contentedly here? Sure enough. A few days later, I emerged from the cave. He was nowhere to be found. "Nianzai. Nianzai." I searched the valley in vain, mystified. Then I saw the words Nianzai had written on a leaf with his magic. "Mother, I'm going to play with Onian. Don't worry." Me? Goodness, he was waiting for me here. 11. I felt both angry and amused. Then a hint of worry rose in my heart. Nianzai wasn't as proficient in magic as I was. What if he encountered someone from the immortal realm along the way? Thinking of this, I didn't care about the suspicion my repeated visits to Kunshan Market would arouse. I don't know if it was just luck. As soon as I arrived at Kunshan Market, I ran into Anian. But at first, I mistook him for someone else. "Nianzai." "Anshurying." But as soon as he called my name, I knew it wasn't Nianzai I'd met but Anian. Anian came forward with surprise. "Anshurying, why are you here? Are you here to see me?" I really didn't want to disappoint him. "So," I asked, "Nianzai said he came to see you. Did you see him?" Anian looked bewildered. He shook his head and said he hadn't seen Nianzai. "Today, I went with my father to listen to the immortals' discussions. My father had other matters, so he sent me back." So that's how it was. Perhaps the worry on my face was too obvious. Anian took my hand, offering gentle comfort. "Anshurying, don't worry. Nianzi will be fine. I'll go with you to look for him." A warm feeling washed over me, and I was about to say something. An immortal servant approached from a short distance. "Young prince, why are you here? Didn't the emperor just tell you to go to the study?" "When did father ever tell me to go to the study?" "Just now, I saw the emperor and his highness." Anian's doubtful voice suddenly stopped. His round eyes lifted, blinking as they met my gaze. I instantly understood what he meant. He hadn't seen Changza since he came back. Then who had Changza summoned him to the study? Could it be Nianzi? I was furious, my face filled with anxiety. I changed my demeanor and followed Nien towards Chang's study. As soon as I reached the hall, I saw two figures, one standing and one sitting, in the study, its door open. Have you memorized the mental method I taught you yesterday? Chang's cool, steady voice echoed. The person standing before him remained silent. But his hands, twirling behind his back, twisted this way and that. His little head shifted furtively from time to time. I could imagine the swirling eyes on Nianzi's face right now. Changza didn't hear the other person's response for a long time. His voice and gaze darkened, resting on Nianzi. Nien. Ah? You called me. I noticed Changza's breathing was slightly heavier, and he repeated his previous words. He asked Nianzi to recite the mental method. How could he do it? He hesitated and stammered. As expected, given Chang's stern nature, he would definitely give Nianzi another lecture. What's wrong with you today? Why are you so restless? Stay here and memorize the Heart Sutra before dinner. With that, Changza left, waving his sleeves. I looked down at the person in front of me. Has your father always been so strict with you? Yeah, it's not so bad. Poor kid. I watched Chang's figure disappear into the distance. Nien and I exchanged glances and headed towards the study. Nien looked around like a thief. I noticed and couldn't help but ask, "What are you doing?" "I'm afraid of being seen," he replied sheepishly. I felt a mixture of laughter and tears. Then I thought, if it weren't for Nianzi taking his place. Nien, as the young master of this study. When had I ever felt so guilty? Don't worry. Your father is currently busy with official business, and the study is generally off limits. You don't have to worry. I reassured him. The man looked up at me in surprise. Aunt Shiriying, how do you know so much about my father? I chuckled and changed the subject. Come in. 13. In the study. Nianzi had completely forgotten what Changza had just said to him. He was looking around like a curious baby. I wondered what he had set his sights on. He ran to the desk where Changza usually sat. What is this? Nianzi. His hand had barely touched the box beside the desk when I stopped him in his tracks with a roar. Mother. Nianzi's eyes lit up, and he quickly recognized my true form. Then, as if realizing something, he darted away like a rabbit. Stop right there, you little brat. You dare run away from home without saying goodbye. I'll beat you up. Normally, he'd just be on Yunsang Mountain, tearing off rooftops. Today, he'd even gone to Kunshan Market. Even after being mistaken for Onion, he still walked around with impunity, unfazed. Oh Mom, don't be angry, I didn't mean it. Nianzi and I circled the table. His cocky and mischievous behavior was so frustrating that it gave me a headache. Onion, save me. Even the gods can't save you today. Onion watched Nianzi and I chase each other. I don't know if he found it funny, but he joined us. Watching two identical figures in front of me play chicken and hawk. I felt a mixture of anger and laughter. A quarter of an hour later, I had successfully dragged Nianzi to me. Nianzi cried out for me to be gentle. That was impossible. Next, Nianzi surrendered under my deafening barrage of voices. Aunt Shiriying, Nianzi didn't mean to do that. Just let him go. Nien was the last to speak. Not that I really wanted to do anything to Nianzi. From childhood to adulthood, I've never suppressed Nianzi's instincts. I just didn't expect him to be so bold. But Nianzi seemed undaunted. After I finished scolding him, his stomach growled. Mom, I'm hungry. He scratched his head and looked at me sheepishly. I was about to say I'd take him back home to eat, but Nien had already stood up. Hungry? I'll go to the kitchen and get you some delicious pastries. No need. We couldn't stay long, or we'd cause any trouble. But as soon as I said no, Nian's expression turned dejected. Are you leaving? Can't you stay with me a little longer? Sure. Mother, let's eat with Nian before we go. Nianzi grabbed my hand and said, you don't know how strict Nian's father is. He actually made Nian copy such a long manual. Poor Nian. What the hell? He was supposed to copy the manual, okay. If he hadn't taken Nian's place, would Nian have to endure this? I was so angry I laughed. I turned around and saw Nian's expectant look again. At this hour, Changza wouldn't be back for a while. Eating shouldn't take long. Okay. Nian happily ran to the kitchen to get some snacks. The two of them were enjoying their meal at the table Changza used for official business. Mother, you eat too. Bang. Nianzi accidentally bumped into the box on the table. The contents immediately spilled out. Nian was startled. Oh no. We knocked father's things over. He hurriedly gathered them. Nianzi was with him, but his attention was drawn to a small drawing on the floor. What is this? He slowly unfolded the drawing and exclaimed. Wow, mother. The person in this drawing looks just like you. My eyebrows jumped. Isn't it? The person in the drawing was exactly how I had dressed when I was in Kunshan Market. Nian had already come closer. It really is. But Aunt Shuriying, how did your drawing end up in my father's box? He glanced at me in confusion. Nianzi's gaze was filled with suspicion. Mother, what's going on? How should I know? Besides, how can you be sure it's really me? Two eyes blazed down at me. I turned their heads away with each hand, stiffening my neck as I replied. There are so many similar people in the world. Look at you and Nian, aren't they? This isn't me. You've got the wrong person. Under my deception, the two little men were half believing, half doubting. Have you finished eating? If you're done, it's time to go. Fearing trouble, I pulled Nianzi up and prepared to leave. Nian followed closely, ready to walk us to the study door. But before we'd taken 2 steps, I heard a familiar voice outside. Is the emperor here? Fu Yao. Nian's eyes widened. What should I do? From Fu Yao's voice, it sounded like she was heading inside. I frowned and cupped Nianzi's face. Son, I'm sorry. What? Before he could finish his words, I transformed him into a small snake and wrapped it around my wrist, hiding it with my sleeve. 15. Just as I finished all this, Fu Yao stepped inside. Seeing me inside, she frowned slightly and then scolded, How dare you? Which palace are you from? How dare you enter the emperor's palace without permission? Nian quickly explained, I let her in. My father asked me to copy the secret techniques. I was hungry, and she brought me some snacks. Fu Yao's suspicious gaze fixed on me. She narrowed her eyes as I lowered my head. Nian stepped forward and interrupted her, and Fu Yao, what do you want from my father? He's not here. Fu Yao smiled, nothing much. The Penglai immortal realm sent a few auspicious beasts, and the emperor was just asking to see them. Since the emperor isn't here, I'll come back later. Fu Yao leisurely left. Nian and I both breathed a sigh of relief. Nian, I really have to go. With Fu Yao's sudden appearance, Nian couldn't stay any longer. Okay, Aunt Shuriying, remember to come see me when you have time. It seemed as if I could enter Kunshan ruins unimpeded. But in the end, I couldn't bear to refuse. I touched Nian's little face. I will. 16. As soon as I walked out of the Kunshan ruins' immortal palace gate, the Nian cub, curled around my wrist, began to stir impatiently. Mother, can I come out? Just be quiet, you know how bad things almost happened today. I refused and scolded him. But as soon as I finished speaking, a powerful magical celestial light struck from the side. You're a demon, indeed. Now I see where you can escape. Fu Yao's cold voice echoed. I barely dodged her attack. Seeing Fu Yao, my eyes turned cold. I don't know how she sensed something was wrong. She followed me all the way, only attacking me after I left. Now I can only be thankful that I look the same as when I last brought Anian back. But Fu Yao actually remembered it. You? She stared at me and suddenly sneered. I knew you were restless. Don't think that just because you saved the young prince you can do whatever you want and come and go freely in Kunshan ruins. I've seen many people like you who seek to repay a favor. Fu Yao's hostility was too obvious. Nianzai's worried voice reached my ears. Mother. Are you okay? I'm out to help you. Hush. Just stay here. I didn't want to argue with her. But Fu Yao saw me protecting something in my sleeve. She thought I'd stolen something from their Kunshan ruins and asked me to take it out. I've heard that Fairy Fu Yao guards Kunshan ruins and regards herself as the mistress of the place, ruling over every blade of grass and every tree. Now I see that the rumors are true. You, a demon, dare to mock me? Fu Yao said angrily. I've always disliked her, but I've tolerated her for Chang's sake. Now I have to endure her wrath. Unable to resist, I splashed Fu Yao with the flower juice. Then I slapped her face a few times. She must have been pampered these past few years. She hadn't improved at all. I had planned to deal her a couple of blows and leave. Unexpectedly, I retracted my attack and spun around. Another sharp sword flash came from behind me. It struck me to the ground with lightning speed. Who dares to act so recklessly in Kunshan Market? The familiar, cold voice struck my head like jade. Emperor. Fu Yao, delighted, rushed forward. She stood beside Changza, looking disheveled. Ying, after a weak expression of grievance, glared at me angrily. Emperor, this demon is so ungrateful. She actually came to Kunshan Market to steal. Your Majesty, kill her. What did you steal? Changza's eyes were sharp and cold. It descended upon me from above. Before I could say anything, Fu Yao cast a spell directly on my wrist. Ouch! A flash of silver light passed, and Nianzi rolled twice on the ground before scrambling to his feet. Little Prince! Fu Yao exclaimed in shock. Changza also frowned fiercely. But he quickly realized something. You're not on Yen. Nianzi felt a little guilty at first. He coughed twice and suddenly extended his hand in front of me. Don't bully my mother. After he finished speaking, another child's voice echoed from nearby. Father, don't hurt them. 17. In the blink of an eye, two identical figures stood before me. An Yen hurried over, just like Nianzi. Father, they are my friends. Please don't hurt them. How could there be two little princes? Fu Yao was stunned, completely bewildered. But Changza wasn't like that. He always kept his emotions to himself, and his mind was incredibly sharp. In a split second, his blazing, dark gaze fell on me. Then, Changza walked towards me. Come here. He was staring at me, my heart pounding. No matter what, in front of Changza, I always seemed to have no secrets, nowhere to hide. As expected. The next second, a cold wind blew against my face. Then, I heard Fu Yao gasp. Changza was still staring at me. His eyes seemed still for a few seconds. His face was expressionless, but his eyes were dark and unfathomable. Then, I heard his voice, his emotions indistinguishable. Shuriying. An Yen looked at Changza, confused. He seemed surprised that he knew me. Another second later, Changza said. You really made it so hard to find me. I saw him clenching his fists, as if trying to hold back. But he couldn't help but reach out, as if wanting to touch me. I looked at his icy face, unable to suppress the anger within me. Pa! I slapped him directly across the face. How dare you, heartless man, hurt me? After the beating, I grabbed Nianzi. Son, run. A Nian's voice came from behind me. Father, why are you laughing? 18. Back at Yunsong Mountain, I found a place to heal my wounds. Nianzi, once a mischievous child, was now well behaved, quietly staying by my side. Mother, are you okay? A lot happened today. All because of his sudden departure. He never expected to hurt me. He was looking at me with tears in his eyes, worried and embarrassed. I didn't mean to blame him. After all, I was at fault too. I should have taken him away the moment I found him. But I was hoping for a lucky break, and wanted to stay with a Nian for a while longer. It's okay. Although Changza looked cold, his moves were also cold. But unless it was a particularly vicious demon. Otherwise, his first attack wouldn't have done much damage. At most, it would just be a minor injury. I'll be fine after 2 days of rest. Nianzai was half believing, half doubting, but also overly worried. He simply stayed with me. He nestled beside me, his body small and soft. It reminded me of when I hatched him as a child. Nianzai was like that back then. In the blink of an eye, the once sweet and soft little person has become a troublemaker. Mother, the one who hurt you today is Anian's father. Do you know him? I was just sighing. Suddenly, I heard Nianzai ask. It's unlikely that he didn't know him. Nianzai may be young, but he's smart. As for knowing him, I didn't really want Nianzai to know about my past with Changza. When I was trying to get away with it by pretending to sleep, I completely forgot that Anian was also there. What Changza couldn't learn, he could learn from Anian. So, early the next morning, I woke up in a place both familiar and unfamiliar. It felt familiar because it was my residence in the Kunshan Ruins Palace. It felt unfamiliar because I hadn't been back here in 300 years. I looked at the largely unchanged layout. Suddenly, I woke up. Just as I was about to get off the ground, I heard a familiar voice. Awake. Changza. I squinted my eyes and looked at the person sitting there. He wore a plain blue robe, cool and gentle. There was no trace of the cold and aloof look from that day. To be honest, the moment I saw him, I felt a bit dazed. It was like I was back to the time we first met. My fateful relationship with Changza began 300 years ago. The story is a bit cliché. He saved my life and I pledged my love to him. Later he was taken back to the heavens, but because of his demonic identity, he was ostracized by everyone. Finally, after giving birth to Nege's twin dragon eggs, she fled. I was afraid that taking 2 eggs would arouse his suspicion and pursuit. That's why I left Onion behind. But I never expected that fate could be so wonderful. Those destined to meet will meet again. Those destined to reunite will reunite again. 19. Where's Nian? He's with Onion. Don't worry. He was calm and composed, his demeanor steady and composed. I almost laughed out loud. But before I could say anything, Nege's gaze shifted towards me. His gaze was fixed, and deep within his eyes seemed to hold something profound and weighty. Shering, you've kept this from me for so long. He suddenly spoke. Nege's didn't seem hostile. On the contrary, he looked more like someone abandoned seeking justice. I found it truly amusing. I've known him for so many years. I've never seen him so deeply affectionate. Thinking of this, I took a deep breath. After all, things had come to this. Since Changza knew I was still alive, this time, I might as well cut ties completely. I found a seat to sit across from Changza. Changza said, after all these years, you had the heart to abandon me and Onion. I understood his implication. I couldn't help but sneer, a hint of sarcasm in my eyes. Doesn't Emperor Changza know why? He fell silent. His eyes seemed to be filled with other emotions for a moment. Changza looked at me with a complicated expression. I could probably guess why he felt this way. When I was attracted to him, I followed him around all day, always being obedient and flattering, speaking sweet nothings. When had I ever spoken to him with such harsh words? I figured he wouldn't need me to remind him. He could guess why. 20 back then, he went to Yingzhou in the East China Sea to subdue the monsters. After being injured, he accidentally fell to my home Immortal Mountain. I rescued him and asked him to marry me. He agreed. But after bringing me back to Kunshan ruins, he ignored me. He allowed me to be bullied and ridiculed by Fu Yao and the other immortals, never saying a word in my defense. I'm not someone who clings to others. The reason I asked him to stay was simply because I'd lived alone for thousands of years, and felt lonely and needed someone to keep me company. If Changza didn't want to marry me, he should have said so. I wouldn't have forced him to repay my life-saving favor. He married me, but couldn't protect me, and even caused me to suffer and be wronged. How could I let this go? And yet, I asked for a divorce and he refused. The dignified Emperor of Heaven, yet so indecisive. How could I not feel resentment? If he had been more forthright, I wouldn't have conspired to escape with the child. Now he's blaming me for lying and hiding things. Changza knew he was in the wrong. He stood in silence for a long time, his eyes lowered. It's my fault. I've been looking for you all these years. And Anian, he's always missed you. His eyes were downcast. There was a hint of dejection. So you kidnapped me? Are you planning to lock me up? Changza's face paled. No, I didn't mean to hurt you that day. I just wanted you to recover. I didn't want to hear it and turned my head away. Changza trembled and closed his mouth. Finally, he stood up and left. 21. For the next few days, I didn't see Changza again. He knew he was annoying, so he didn't show up. I decided to look for Nianzai. I happened to run into them in Anian's study. Oh, so your father is my father. So your mother is my mother. Nianzai and Anian each held their chins, their faces grimacing. I guess he and Anian have been colluding these past few days. Each learned something about Changza and me from the other. Through their discussion, they pieced together a coherent story. What should we do? Nianzai sighed. Nianzai asked, will mother be with father? You want them to be together? Yes. Nianzai nodded. Nianzai frowned, thinking. But I want mother to be happy. I do too. But I also want mother to be with me. At first, I couldn't help but sigh, I'm the one I raised. But Nianzai's dejected voice made me fall silent. I'm probably biased. I always feel a sense of indebtedness and guilt towards Nianzai. Now he knows everything, but I still haven't chosen him. I wonder if he'll blame me. As I was grappling with my feelings and sinking into melancholy, I encountered another unexpected person, Fu Yao. Unlike last time. This time, she looked at me with unconcealed jealousy. Shering, you're not dead. To be honest, Fu Yao and I have no grudges against each other. She's a disciple guarding the Kunshan ruins. She was already in charge of Kunshan ruins before Changza and I met. Back then, I had just arrived in the immortal world and felt uneasy. She was always there to help me. I thought she was a good person. Later, after being framed several times, I realized she was the one behind the scenes. Compared to those monsters that directly seek your life, this kind of despicable behavior is even more despicable. Excuse me, are you disappointed that I didn't die? I sneered at her. I don't think I'll ever forget what Fu Yao did to me. At that time, I was determined to leave. But because I was pregnant, Changza was keeping a close eye on me. It was Fu Yao who found me. She said she had a way to help me leave Kunshan Market. In desperation, I followed her advice. On the day of my delivery, I chose to have her fake my own death and escape. Of course, I knew Fu Yao wasn't that kind. But I never imagined she would actually kill me. She wanted to make my fake death a real one. If I hadn't been so lucky, I might have died. I saw Fu Yao's beautiful face twisted with anger. Her eyes were like knives, as if she wanted to poke holes in me. It was clear that she wanted to kill me immediately. But she still had some sense and wouldn't be so foolish as to attack me in Kunshan Market. Fu Yao, I remember your great favor back then. I smiled at her. Seeing the mixture of panic and resentment in her eyes, I left. 22. In a few days, I'll take Nianzi back to Yunsong Mountain. Changza heard the news and blocked my way at the door with Anian. Neither of them spoke. Just stood by the corridor and watched. I had no attachment to Changza, only to Anian. I wanted to apologize to him, but saying too much would only make me feel more reluctant. Finally, I gritted my teeth and took Nianzi's hand and left. After returning to Yunsong Mountain, life returned to normal. I walked the baby in my free time and occasionally supervised Nianzi's homework. But something was strange. Since returning from Kunshan Market, Nianzi has been surprisingly well behaved and obedient. Not only does he practice diligently every day, but he's even stopped doing his favorite things, hunting birds and fishing. Something's wrong, something's very wrong. Anian? Ah. Looking at the embarrassed and guilty expression on the face of the little creature before me, I didn't know whether to be angry or amused. Anian had truly been led astray. He'd actually done the same as Nianzai, swapping identities with me. Nonsense. I scolded him softly, threatening to send Anian back to Kunshan Market and exchange Nianzai for me. Anian said nothing, simply pursed his lips. Finally, he let me take his hand and walk away. This scene inevitably reminded me of the first time he'd been lost and I'd taken him back to Kunshan Market. Back then, he didn't know my identity, and he was still filled with reluctance. Now, even more so. Anian remained silent. I could still sense his emotions. Just as I was about to say something, a celestial net suddenly descended from the sky, enveloping Anian and me. At first, I thought it was some demon hunter. Until I saw Fu Yao walk out, accompanied by several immortal servants. 23. Shering, you're finally in my hands. This time, let's see how you can escape. Anian's eyes widened. He seemed still dazed by Fu Yao's surprise attack on us. He shouted, "Aunt Fu Yao, what are you doing? Hey, what kind of bastard dares to call me by my name? Boy, don't think that just because your mother gave birth to you, the emperor will acknowledge your existence." Fu Yao sneered. Anian was stunned by the mocking and derogatory words. I heard that Fu Yao usually treated him very well. She never showed such a sinister side in front of others. I couldn't bear to tell him. At that time, Fu Yao thought he was the child I raised. If Fu Yao knew he was Anian, she would probably restrain herself. But there was no way. Fu Yao had a deep grudge against me. After the provocation, he took 2 leisurely steps back. Go kill her and that bastard. I protected Anian behind me. Outnumbered, the battle was overwhelming. Mother. Anian was worried about me, chanting mantras and spells to help me. But before she could help, Fu Yao seized the opportunity and grabbed her. The tiny body thrashed in Fu Yao's hands. Fu Yao, it's okay for you to attack me, but he's Changzai's child. If you hadn't been so lucky, do you think you could have given birth to them? Fu Yao said, and that bastard you left behind for the emperor. If the emperor hadn't watched over him day and night, he would have been killed long ago. A monster stained with demonic blood dares to lay hands on the emperor. Fu Yao's malice washed over me. Anian's face paled with fear. I felt murderous intent, ready to fight to the death. But just then, Changzai's voice, as cold as ice, echoed through the air. Who are you calling the bastard? Behind him, a figure that looked exactly like a Nien. Mother. He rushed towards me and threw himself into my arms. That was right, this was Nianzi. Anian's eyes, held by the neck, were red. Father, Wuwu, save me. 24. Because of Changza's arrival, Fuyao's ambush failed. She trembled with fear, her legs giving way as she knelt before Changza. She had lost her initial arrogance. Anian, whether frightened or injured, fell ill after returning home. I cared for him for a few days, and seeing that he was almost well, I planned to take Nianzi away. Unexpectedly, Anian wasn't happy. When he woke up, he hugged my thighs and cried. Mother, don't go. I want to be with you. His eyes were red from crying, so pitiful. Is there something I didn't do well enough for you to abandon me and dislike me? His tears melted my heart. I simply gritted my teeth, and took the initiative to find Changza. I want to take Anian with me. I left him behind to prevent Changza from finding me. Now Changza has discovered my existence. So I have nothing to fear. If he still has a conscience, he'll show mercy and return Anian to me. That would reunite Nianzai and Anian. What about me? Surprisingly, Changza didn't refuse. But his eyes trembled, and he couldn't help but ask softly. I looked him straight in the face, I only want Anian. 25. After that day, two small figures appeared on Yunsang Mountain. The valley, once somewhat deserted and desolate, suddenly became lively with the presence of Nianzai and Anian. My life returned to normal. In fact, it felt even happier. I often moved a rattan chair to lie in the open space among the valley's sea of flowers, watching Nianzai and Anian play and learn with each other. If nothing unexpected happens, I'll probably stay secluded in Yunsang Mountain. But that doesn't mean I'm completely ignorant of what's happening outside. The lovebirds still bring me news from outside the valley. For example, in the valley to the south, where demonic beasts roam, a fairy princess died. I heard that fairy princess was banished from Kunshan ruins, the lovebird said. It didn't need to explain it clearly. I already know who that person is. It's Fuyao. She was taken back to Kunshan ruins. Changza, because her actions were so vicious, destroyed half of her cultivation. Then banished her to the lower realms to atone for her sins by subduing demons. Before returning to Yunsang Mountain, I made a special detour to see her. Fuyao remained as aloof as ever, maintaining her celestial demeanor. Shering, don't be too complacent. I'll definitely come back to you when my training is complete. It's a pity she didn't get that chance. I struck her with a sword, destroying half of her remaining cultivation. Doesn't she look down on demons? Then let her stay here forever. Well, what else? Oh, there's also Emperor Changza outside the valley. He said he's learned a few new dishes and asked if he could take Nianzi and Anian out for dinner. After I took Anian away, Kunshan Market was left with only Changza was left alone. I don't know what he was thinking. He built a small cabin outside the valley of Yunsang Mountain. He loved to stay there when he had nothing to do. It felt like a secluded immortal descending to experience the mundane world. At first, I was speechless. But Changza and I didn't have any deep hatred. Nianzai and Anian were both his children. He couldn't just part ways and never see each other again. After all, he was capable and had a lot to teach Nianzai and Anian. He could also help me take care of the kids. So I turned a blind eye. I just considered it a free ride.